Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. The biggest betting weekend of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Sunday. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. BetOnline has hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game live betting. BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline offers you everything and more to enhance your game day experience. Visit betonline.ag today and make the game day action count a little bit more. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. You know, I woke up this morning thinking about doing a podcast today here on State of State, maybe talking about the wide receivers, trying to see what people would be interested in hearing about. Obviously, that's a hot button issue. And then it was brought to my attention that on social media, apparently, I have said that James Franklin will be fired in 2025 if he doesn't win the national championship. This according to essentiallysports.com, which I didn't even know was a website. And then a gentleman by the name of Craig Swayman on Locked On Big Ten podcast took this as fact and ran with it. Recently I was on College Football Addiction with my good buddy TJ Pittenger. I described the 2025 season for Penn State football as boom or bust. To clarify, I do not think James Franklin will be fired if Penn State does not win the national championship in 2025. Frankly, I never said that, so there's that. Love the way the media works. Boom or bust, I think, can be looked at in a lot of different ways, and that clearly Penn State is going all in for the 2025 football season. One, we've talked about it ad nauseum. The amount of money they just threw at Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator, averaging $3.1 million per year. That is unprecedented by Penn State standards. Retaining Andy Koelnicki as your offensive coordinator when he had head coaching opportunities he could have looked at, West Virginia notably. That probably had to be a little extra change that you're throwing out there. Oh, by the way, you kept Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Zakee Wheatley, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant. The list goes on and on. Most of your offensive line. You went into the transfer portal, and I believe you got 6, maybe 7 players. I'm blanking on the exact number at this point. Penn State is clearly spending with an eye towards capturing the national championship. And here's one thing that also stuck out to me from the press conference that Jim Knowles did earlier on this week. That was one of the first times you've heard a member of a Penn State football staff or team openly talk about their goal being to win the national championship. James Franklin historically is very, very strong and strict about restricting his players from talking about big-time goals like that. It's the 1-0 mentality, right? You win this game this week. If you make the Big Ten title game, great. That's just the next 1-0 opportunity. That's the way that this program has worked the entire time under James Franklin. So you clearly have a team, staff, an organization, a program, whatever, that feel like the national championship is within their grasp. And they should feel that way. You made your way to the Final Four this past year. Yes, I've said it. People can go after the path that Penn State football has been on in this past college football playoff, playing SMU and then Boise State, the easier path, all things considering the strength of opponent, that sort of thing. But Penn State, at least going into 2025, looks like they're going to be one of the top 5 teams in the country, at least in terms of roster, staff, everything that they can present. So credibly, yes, Penn State should be competing for the national championship. So I, yes, described it as boom or bust. So what does bust look like? Well, bust is enormous disappointment for the Penn State football fan base, because if Penn State makes it to the national championship and loses, or again, makes a deep run into the college football playoff and loses, yeah, Penn State fans are going to be upset. I think they should be, and they were after this run. I think there are Penn State fans who thought Penn State could have won the national championship this year. I tended to lean on, this is great that we made it this far. It would have been amazing to see Penn State make the national championship, but there's a lot of ways that all could have played out. Obviously, the game against Notre Dame was a field goal difference, so it was that close. Now, calling me an insider, I think that's cute. I think that's very generous as well. I know plenty of people that work in Penn State football media that are legitimate insiders, and they deserve a lot of respect because they do a lot of reporting. They are in State College. They are interacting with the program and with the team. I would describe myself as an observer. I've been a professional sports broadcaster for 13 years. I went to Penn State. I have been a Penn State football fan my entire life. I have a degree in sports journalism, broadcast journalism, whatever you want to call it, from the College of Communications at Penn State. So I give you my takes. I'm speculating, informed speculation, sure. But that's why when I looked at this 2025 season, I went on there with TJ Pittenger. I was talking about what 2025 could look like for Penn State football. I do not believe James Franklin is going to be fired anytime soon. If anything, I believe what Penn State did in 2024 in the college football playoff further endeared him to the Penn State University. I believe the alignment that you hear about often from President Dr. Neely Bendapudi to athletic director Pat Kraft to head coach of football James Franklin is very strong. And it's what something James has been looking for the entire time that he's been at Penn State. We talk about it a lot in terms of, okay, does the football coach have more power than everybody else? Or is it that literal line? And then is everybody helping each other get to the same goals? I think that's what we finally have here at Penn State. And I've said it before, I've been very tough on James Franklin. This past year, he showed marked improvement in terms of his in-game management. And clearly, you got to the Final Four of the college football playoff. You've shown you can recruit. You've shown you can put together an outstanding coaching staff. So why would you fire this guy? You wouldn't. If Penn State doesn't win the national championship next year, will everybody be disappointed and some people, fans, be really mad? Yeah. Will people be calling for James Franklin's head? Yeah. I probably won't unless there's just an enormous amount of F-ups along the way. But we got to see what happens. I have no expectation that if Penn State were to lose the national championship next year, that James Franklin would be fired by this staff. If anything, he will probably get another extension. And also, as an underlying element to all this stuff, his buyout is enormous right now. I believe it's $48 million at this point in 2025. Somebody can check that online if you want to. See, if I was an insider, I would have that number off the top of my head. Listen, I think the internet is a fascinating place. And if you want to know what I have to say about Penn State football, you can hop in the comment section here on State of State. You can get at me directly on social media and ask me, or you can tune in here on State of State, and I'll tell you exactly how I feel. I feel like the Penn State football team is set up for success in 2025 to the tune of they should be able to credibly compete for the national championship. If they don't, and if they make it and don't win, I don't believe James Franklin is going to be fired. But I stand by my comment that I think next season is boom or bust. Look at all the pieces that you're pushing to the center. As I mentioned before, Kotelnicki and Knowles. A great defensive staff that only continues to get better as Jim Knowles brings in people that he's been familiar with for years. And speaking to Justin King off air, he's very, very excited about a lot of the additions he's brought on, especially Greg Cattuso. So there are some very interesting pieces on the coaching staff that you're like, great, this feels like this is in a good position. You potentially are going to get the best year of Drew Aller at the college level before he goes to the National Football League. I sincerely think so. And here's why. In high school, I mentioned it a number of times. Drew Aller was a 3-star and then a 4-star his junior year. And he didn't become a 5-star until his senior season was underway. What does that say to me? That tells me you have a player who takes time to develop and has high-end potential, but it just takes time. We all thought when Drew Aller was going to first come in as a starter in 2023 that he was going to walk on water and Penn State was going to go to the national championship immediately. There was so much hype that season. That didn't happen. You wind up having a good season, very good season, and you lose to Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. Drew Aller comes back in 2024. It was obvious he had been working and doing a lot better, played a lot better. Statistically, people can point to, well, he had more turnovers, but okay, well, he was taking more risks. He wasn't being nearly as safe with the football, not in a bad way, but like 2023, extremely conservative with the football to the point where you're like, hey, man, like let it rip. He let it rip a lot more in 2024. So with that, there's risk, there's reward. Drew Aller worked on his body, made himself a more credible threat as an athlete, as a runner. That was huge for Penn State football offensively this year. Helped Penn State in a lot of big games. The USC game especially. That was basically the Drew Aller and Tyler Warren show especially. But that was Drew Aller putting the team on his back to try and come back and win that game in overtime against USC, the Minnesota game. Drew Aller was a big part of that game. So you get Drew Aller before he goes to the National Football League. You got one more crack at that. The reason I say boom or bust is because you don't know what the Ethan Grunkemeyer era or whomever is a starting quarterback in 2026 is going to look like. Is that a steep drop-off from Drew Aller? One could plausibly say there will be a drop-off. How steep? We don't know. But if Drew Aller is potentially one of the best quarterbacks in football, it would be a tremendous accomplishment for this football team to have somebody of his caliber or even just a notch down as his backup quarterback ready to start in 2026. Maybe that's the case. We're all going to find out together. I don't know enough about Ethan Grunkemeyer. We have hardly seen any footage of him whatsoever. So you need to see him get out there and rip it. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, maybe the best running back duo in the history of Penn State football. You're going to lose that. This is the year to capitalize on that. The offensive line, 4 out of 5 starters are back. Sal Wormley off to the National Football League, but you maintain everybody in terms of Drew Shelton. Anthony Donko's returning from injury. Nolan Rucci, who played great at right tackle last year. The freshman Cooper Cousins could be somebody that's jumping in. JB Nelson at guard was somebody who was banged up a lot last year, but plenty of experience. Nick Dawkins is back for yet another year. The man won't leave. Nick Dawkins, a Werfel Trophy winner, by the way. Congratulations to Nick Dawkins. Nick Dawkins at center anchors that offensive line in a big way. Landon Tengwall has spoken glowingly of him. And at left guard, the human house, Vega Ioane, who has gotten better and better and better every single time he's been out there and has been a fun part of Andy Kotelnicki's offense. Tight end, you still have a ton of talent. There's about like 6 more tight ends that Penn State brought in as part of the 2025 class. It looks like, to my eyes, and this is not any inside information, this is just me speculating, giving you my opinion. That's what this freaking show is. Is Luke Reynolds. I think he's going to be the number 1 pass catching tight end for Penn State in 2025. That's no shade at Khalil Dinkins. Khalil Dinkins, I think, got eclipsed by Luke Reynolds in that department, not because of lack of talent, but clearly it was, we're going to throw the ball to Tyler Warren at tight end, and then at tight end after that, we're going to throw the ball to Luke Reynolds. They got the ball to Khalil Dinkins as well. I think his gift is more as a blocker, but he will get involved in the passing game. By the way, you'll get Andrew Rappelier back from injury. I think the world of Joey Schlaffer's ability. I worry he's so far in the depth chart that you could see him transfer at some point in time. That just would make sense in terms of numbers to me. But again, no inside information. I'm just speculating. Wide receiver is the big question. Everybody's thinking about that. And that's what I was initially going to come on here and talk about today. That is a huge outlier for Penn State football in 2025 because it sounds like USC's Kyron Hudson has a lot of excitement, has gotten a lot of buzz, at least from the team. I think there was a quote from Andy Kotelnicki saying he could be the, quote, queen piece of the wide receivers or the offense to that degree. Again, go ahead and look up exactly what Kotelnicki said about him. I encourage people to be informed fans. But we don't know what Kyron Hudson is going to work out to be. He had flashes at USC and is certainly a highlight reel type of wide receiver. Devontae Ross started at Troy. Just because Tez Johnson was at Troy doesn't mean this is a clone of Tez Johnson. But Devontae Ross was productive at Troy in the Sun Belt. And yes, he had a game against Iowa where he played extremely well against Big Ten competition. Does that all translate? We don't know. We have to see. Then it's Liam Clifford. Then it's, hopefully, I'd like to see more of Tyseer Denmark. He's certainly got some flash. Caden Saunders, Anthony Ivey, Josiah Brown, like that. There's this whole list of guys, plenty of guys that have come in now as a part of this freshman class. So will they be able to jump in and start immediately? There's certainly going to be the chance to compete. Defensively, we now have plenty more questions with Jim Knowles. We had some questions on social media of like, oh, is Penn State absolutely going from a 4-man front to a 3-man front? We're not entirely sure. Justin and I, to the best of our ability, looking at the way that Jim Knowles has tried to put together his defenses in the past, see an instance where, oh, okay, a 3-man front could make some sense because that's something he wanted to do at Ohio State, but got pushback from Larry Johnson Sr., apparently. That's the story that's been out there. So does he gravitate towards that? Personally, he has the personnel to do it, which is incredible in that you can go one place and they can do a 4-3 or they could do a 3-4, 3-3-5. 4-2-5 is the base defense for Penn State, for the record. So we got to find out. And even Jim Knowles earlier on this week said it's a meshing of ideas. We're working together and we're trying to figure out who does what well to see what we can actually accomplish. But you have Denai Dennis Sutton coming back, arguably the best defensive end in the country. You're going to have to replace the production of Abdul Carter. That is no small feat, despite what Warren Sapp might think. Defensive tackle Zane Durant is the top end of a defensive tackle room that has questions. Kobe King's off to the NFL. That means Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca have to hold down the fort at linebacker. Does that lion/jack position that Jim Knowles has referred to it, does that exist in this defense? Who is that person? Is it a D end? Is it a linebacker? Is it a DB? Jalen Reed was kind of playing that position last year. In the secondary, Jalen Reed is out. KJ Winston is out. Jalen Kimber is out. It's a lot to replace, but there's so much depth within Lockdown U. I'm actually very encouraged about what this secondary can be next season. That Zakee Wheatley had a hell of a college football playoff run and played very, very well the entirety of the season. King Mack returning after being at Penn State, transferring to Alabama, and now back at Penn State. You have that. Day-Day Lane getting a lot of run at safety. A.J. Harris, Antoine Belgrave Shorter, Audavian Collins, Zion Tracy, Cam Miller transferred, and so there's that. There's question marks, but still, the bulk of this team feels like it can credibly compete for the national championship. So yes, to Penn State football fans, and I would count myself among them because I am a Penn State football fan at the end of the day, this feels like a boom or bust situation because you do have to then think about what does the offense look like in 2026 without Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Drew Auer, and a number of pieces along the offensive line. What does that drop off like? Defensively, do things keep rolling in 2026? Who knows? We have to see what goes on the field in September to see if this team is like, oh, okay, there's some real depth here. Maybe they can make a run at it again in 2026. But again, I really think that three-headed monster on offense, once you lose that, that does hurt your ability to credibly compete for the national championship in 2026. I'll say this one last time. I have no inside information that tells me that Penn State football will or will not fire James Franklin if they don't win the national championship in 2025. My gut feeling is they will not. They will not. I think James Franklin has proven to this university that he can build a winner when given the resources to do it. We on the outside looking in may not always completely comprehend what those resources look like, but clearly he has done the work over now 10 plus years to get Penn State incrementally closer to competing for a national championship in a serious way. And that's where we are. I feel Penn State fans, yes, will be upset and disappointed if Penn State doesn't make the national championship or win the national championship next year. Does that mean James Franklin will be fired? I would be stunned if James Franklin were fired next season. And again, I point towards his buyout being outrageous. There's a number that you're investing all of this in the football program. You're going all in to try and win the national championship. Why would you spend that to fire the guy who got you there? Doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I just felt like it was necessary to come on here and clarify and clear the air. So I want to thank TJ Pittenger for having me on College Football Addiction so often. I want to thank the Believe Podcast Network for giving me so many opportunities to work here on State of State and Believe in Big Ten with Rhett Lewis, where I can talk about Penn State football. I love this team. I love the university. I love the community. And, it's just weird. I didn't even know essentiallysports.com was a website, but there you go. If you have any other questions, hop in the comments section. Let me know what they are. I'll come on here and talk about more stuff. We can even go live if you want to, and I will happily answer every question you have. I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.